Grace and peace. I'm Brian Muster, the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Christian Fellowship, the peace of Jesus Christ to change our lives, the power of the Holy Spirit to change the world. And we are finishing up our summer term Bible study series that we've been going over selected passages from 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, entitled Heavy is the Crown, the Rise and Fall of the Hebrew Kingdom. And we are looking at the end of the Hebrew kingdom today. Lesson 10, the fall of Jerusalem. If you're in and around Drexel, this will be a live conversation in the JEMIC at 5 p.m. on Sunday, September 7th. The first video of this lesson, Lesson 10, first video of Lesson 10, will be talking about the king, the return of the king, and this idea of what the monarchy, what the exile does to the monarchy, and the little glimmer of hope that is at the end of 2nd Kings as we get to chapter 25. But I want to start off here with the covenant God makes with David. This is 2 Samuel 7, 11b through 16. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. And these are the promises God makes to David. This is the Davidic covenant. This is the covenant that establishes the monarchy in Jerusalem. And for 400 years or less, about 400 years, plus or minus a couple years there, that this has held true. There has always been, except for about 6 years when Athaliah, the queen, supplanted the king. Except for those 6 years, there has always been a descendant of David on the throne in Jerusalem. And that has been a promise God has made. And quite often, the people of Judah just assumed that God would defend that and that God would not be able to break that promise. And they just assumed, probably with overconfidence, that this would always be true. But then Babylon happens, and the Babylonian exile. And we see 2 Kings 25, 5 through 7, but the Babylonian army pursued the king. This is King Zedekiah at this time, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. All his soldiers were separated from him and scattered, and he was captured. He was taken to the king of Babylon at Riblah, where sentence was pronounced on him. They killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. Then they put out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. Not only is the king, the last king in Jerusalem, a prisoner, but his entire line, his sons, have all been slaughtered before him. It looks like Babylon is intent on destroying the Davidic reign of David and bringing that promise God made to David to come untrue. And this is not kind of the first time the king in the line of David has been taken prisoner. And just looking at it, since Josiah died in battle against Pharaoh Necho of Egypt. His son was then put on the throne by the people of Judah, but he was quickly removed by King Necho again, and he died a prisoner in Egypt. Jehoiakim was installed by Necho, but he died, seems to died okay, as king in Jerusalem. He's the last king to die as king in Jerusalem. Then they put his son on the throne, Jehoiakim, but he's quickly in the conflicts between Egypt and Babylon. He is quickly taken prisoner by Nebuchadnezzar. But at the end of Kings, he is alive in Babylon. And then Zedekiah is installed by Nebuchadnezzar, but also blinded and taken prisoner by Nebuchadnezzar, and he dies as a prisoner in Babylon. So all these kings are kind of like seen as the last of the line of David, and they all are taken prisoner or die in certain ways, and the line of David seems to fizzle out. It isn't like this grand thing where like Ahab's line was totally wiped out in one fell swoop by Jehu. It is just over and over again by the competition between Egypt and Babylon. The monarchy is suffering. But then Second Kings gives this little glimmer of hope. Not the most recent king, not Zedekiah, but the one before him, Jehoiachin. In the 37th year of exile of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, in the year Marduk became king of Babylon, he released Jehoiachin, king of Judah, from prison. He did this on the 27th day of the 12th month. He spoke kindly to him and gave him a seat of honor higher than those of the other kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiachin put aside his prison clothes, and for the rest of his life ate regularly at the king's table. Day by day, the king gave Jehoiachin a regular allowance as long as he lived. It's not great. It's not a throne in Jerusalem. But the line of David still persists. There is still at least one king in the line of David still alive. He is no longer a prisoner, no longer wearing prison clothes, and he is a guest at the table of the most powerful king in the world at this moment, but he is not completely free or of any sort of monarchy whatsoever. But the line is not absolutely destroyed. So looking at some of these things, God had made a covenant with David promising that his throne would be established forever. After Josiah dies in battle, Jehoahaz, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah are all taken prisoner either to Egypt or Babylon. It is not good to be king in Jerusalem. Jehoiakim is the only king after Josiah to die of somewhat natural causes and to die in the land of Judah. But at the end of Kings, Jehoiachin is still alive and being treated favorably in Babylon. So the exile does major damage to the identity of the people of Judah as being ruled by Davidic monarchy forever. They had that belief. They had that established. They thought that was the way God promised it, and they were almost certain that things couldn't touch them because of the promises of God. Now, being in exile forced them to reinterpret those promises, forced them to consider whether those promises were conditional or unconditional, and also gave them a way to look and hope that God was going to fulfill that promise, even though in the natural world it seemed almost unfulfillable. So what is coming down the road? There is a glimmer of hope with Jehoiachin, but there's also this devastating feeling that the promises of God may be about to fail. And that made the people of Judah really, really question what it meant to believe in God. I know we talk a lot about deconstruction theory these days in Christianity. Well, the exile forced the people of Judah, the people of God who lived in Judah, to really, really figure out what their faith was in, what it was about, and how these things could be happening to them, even alongside of what they believed about God and God's promises. So, questions, discussion questions. Would love to hear from you. Drop down in the comments section below. And if you're coming in person, these are some of the questions we will be discussing around the table. How would the events of the exile affect someone who believed in God's covenant with David? What would be going through their mind as they're sitting in exile, but knew about God's covenant with David? If you are in exile, how would the ending of Kings make you feel? Why? The fact that Jehoiachin is still alive and no longer a prisoner How would that make you feel, and why would it make you feel that way? And what are some of the things that we have come to understand about God's covenant with David since the exile? How has the 2,500 years since Babylon conquered Jerusalem helped us reevaluate what God actually promised with David, and what things have happened since then that caused us to do that reevaluation? So, as always, there's two ways to join this conversation: in person Sunday nights, 5 p.m. in the JEMIC, and these weekly wrap-ups on YouTube and or WordPress. I am all over the social media: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and follow as you see appropriate. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. Hopefully it continues real soon.